Hey guys. Okay, so this is a short stream about the way we use Git Flow in Mementia. I would just be able to not hear myself for some reason. Just give me a second. Okay. Should be better. Okay, Albina, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, wonderful. So in Mementia, obviously, we do e-commerce support and we do a lot of coding. And when you do a lot of coding, you need version control. And when you need version control, you need a system to help you have a process and not make a mess out of it. We still manage to make a mess out of it many times, but less than if we would have just a free-form workflow. We use Git in Mementia. One of the workflows for Git, a very popular one, is Git Flow. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. The actual purpose of recording this is for me not to repeat this to somebody else, because I've been repeating this for at least 3 times to various people. So I want to record this and save it and have it available for future generations. Okay, so now I'm going to share the screen and talk a little bit about what it is and how it works. And I'm going to just share a picture, and that's what we'll be looking at. Okay. So should be able to see the screen soon.
Yeah, I can see it already.
Okay, great. Okay, so Git Flow is a workflow for Git that makes sure that multiple people can work on a project without messing with each other, and also that QA can have specific clean environments to test in. So this is the basic workflow. I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller so it fits in screen. Okay. So this is the whole workflow, and this is basically how it works. So in Git, we have branches, and Git Flow is using what we call feature branches, release branches, and also a special kind of branch called hotfixes. The basic releases are in master, and the basic work is accumulated and developed. So Albina is my audience today. Albina was looking at workflow earlier as a non-developer. Albina, can you try and explain how you understand it right now so we can start from something?
Yeah, but I read it before, so I read this article with these explanations. So yeah, so when we start developing anything, if it's not urgent, so we don't need to release it like today, and we can work on it. We are how it's called, taking the branch from develop, right? And we are making feature branch.
Right. Yeah. That would be cool.
And working on this branch. After we can test this branch and everything is okay, this branch is should be merged with develop.
Right.
And after that, this develop, as I understand, from this I have troubles. I have problems understanding. After that, from the develop, should be a different release branch, or develop is preparing as a release branch? Like here is I have a issue. So it should be different branch or not a release branch when it's preparing for development.
Okay, so develop and release branches are different branches. As you can see on the graphic. The release branches on the graphic are green and develop is yellow. So commits in release are yellow or green, and commits in develop are yellow. Feature branches are pink, I guess, magenta.
Yeah.
Master is cyan, so that's basically how it is. Hotfixes are kind of red. So they're all different. They're all in different branches. The branches are represented vertically here, right? So these lines that you see from the top to the bottom are branches. And time goes down on the graphic. So basically, older commits are up and newer commits are down. So that's basically how it works. It's different branches for sure. A release branch is a separate branch. What many people so let's start with common misconceptions here. People think, okay, I work on a feature, then it's ready, and then I create a release branch, right, to deploy that feature to production. And this is very common in smaller teams that don't have a lot of Git traffic, because they usually work on a couple of features, and they think that's how it works because they're used to releasing features on a case-by-case basis, right? Git Flow stimulates versions and version releases with release branches. So it's meant to fix a problem with a more simple approach. And here's the problem. When you do it case by case, let's forget about Git Flow, right? Let's take just master as live, right? And then we create a feature branch from live. We'll work on that feature branch, and then we just merge back to live, okay? Are you following me, Albina, here?
Yeah,
so just imagine that develop is master, okay? So yellow is live, let's say, right? And then you would just work on live, right? And it will still be okay because you wouldn't mess with live. You would work on a different branch, you test that different branch, and then you put it back to live, right? This is the most simple workflow you can have in Git. The only more simple workflow would be that you work directly on live, which is, I hope I don't have to explain why it's a bad idea, right? Why this is not the perfect thing when you have a lot of Git traffic. The problem is that it's quite impossible to do regression testing this way, because at one point in time, you only have one feature in progress, and then you have the rest of the stuff from live that's older, right? You can even merge live into your feature branch. You still don't do real regression testing because this doesn't really allow for multiple feature branches to exist at the same time. And even in smaller projects, we have multiple features developed because you have delays that are, even if you have just a single developer, you have delays with QA, clients, external things and stuff. So it can be, you can have easily like 5 issues in progress, right? 5 features in progress. And the problem there is that this doesn't really allow you to test them all together, right? You don't have a way to test them all together if you just use feature branches and master. You can only test them separately. So in order to test them together, you need the mechanism of release branches. That is the purpose of it, right? The purpose of release branches is to accumulate all the features and then test them together. In other words, do regression testing. So that's why it exists.
Is it staging, right? Is it staging that we have?
You can, yeah, in Mementia we call it staging. You can call it whatever you want. Some people call it a testing server. So please know that environments like servers and websites and things like that don't really have a lot to do with Git Flow in particular, right? Git Flow is talking about code only. So you can build a mobile app right here, and you would have a release branch with the code of that mobile app. And you would have feature branches with features of that mobile app. It would still work. It would still apply. So for testing, you need to test the feature branch to make sure it actually works, right? That the feature is complete. And then you need to test the release branch because you need to make sure that the version you release, in other words, a list of issues, a list of features, is well tested and ready to replace the current live, the current master. So one more common misconception, again, going back to my original example, is that people think that temporarily, this happened temporarily, it happens at the same time. So you finish the feature branch, you create a release. This is possible, you can do this, and it's even written on, it's even drawn on the graphic here. But it doesn't have to actually happen like this. So you can create a release branch at any time. It's quite independent from feature branches. Feature branches branch from develop and they go back into develop. Release branches can go from develop at any point in time. And they're not directly tied into feature branches. Although most of the time, when you finish the feature branch, you would want to create the release branch in order to start testing and preparing for release. Is this part clear?
Yeah, clear. Just I still would like it to see on examples. I understand that this is code, but for example, on our examples, where do we test it? Like,
so in Mementia, what we do is we test features separately, and then we test the version before release, right? So we do have to do two things. Feature branches can be tested on what we call work in progress, or WIP environment, where we just quickly switch branches and test what we need to test. So a feature branch by itself, the feature itself, can be tested there, right? On a small server that you have, and that you switch to the feature branch, you look at how it works. Okay, it's working fine. I've tested it. It's okay, and then you can merge it back to develop. You usually do code review on this step as well before merging to develop. If this would be a mobile app, of course, you would have a build where you build only the branch with that feature. You test it, and then you say, okay, pass testing. With a desktop app, you would do the same with a desktop, and so on. If you have a build infrastructure, as we have, then feature branches can be also built automatically. When you commit to the feature branch, when you do the commit to the branch, then a branch can be built with if it's a web app, it can be a separate URL or whatever. But you can also do it manually. Git Flow doesn't really require any automation, although automation is nice. So feature branches you can test on a feature branch test environment. We call that work in progress, WIP. You can call it whatever you like, and you can also create a separate, for web apps, you can create separate URLs for each feature. That's kind of nice, and you can see them all together and test them separately. Develop doesn't need to be tested at all, and this is again misconceptions. Develop doesn't have to be stable at all. The develop doesn't have to be tested, because it's just a bunch of code. It's a chunk of code that just goes forward, and it doesn't have to be stable. There's no purpose in testing develop at all. Release branch, however, must be tested. That's the whole point of it. And release branch should be tested on a separate environment, not our work in progress. There should be a staging environment that is maximally approximate to the live environment. And then, of course, you would do testing after deployment as well, right, to make sure that it works. But hopefully, you don't find any bugs there, because you find all the bugs during testing on the staging environment on the release branch. It's expected that we find bugs during testing the release branch. That's expected. That's how it's supposed to work, because those would be interactions, problems that code creates with interacting with other code. That's normal. Those things we fix in the release branch, but we don't add nothing else. We don't add anything else. That's why it says only bug fixes here. Only bug fixes mean that we only fix the release branch so that it's stable, it will work when we deploy to live. We don't add any features there. Any change that we do to the release branch goes automatically back into develop. So you don't have to fix it 2 times. Any questions here, Albina?
No, right now I'm getting clear why you asked me that I want to have 2 features on work in progress environment.
Yeah.
So, okay, I got it. So right now, for example, everything what we have, that 2 features in work in progress, we will need them, like according to this flow, we will need them on staging first before the release, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So you need to test the you can theoretically you could use the same server. If you're talking about that, you could use the same server to test the release branch. It's not a good practice, because usually staging servers should be clean and separate and refreshed as much as possible, ideally automatically from live. But you could test it there. You just switch the branch to the release branch. There's nothing magical about the release branch. It's just a branch, like any other branch. In Git Flow, they have prefixes so that we can understand what it is, right? So release would have a release/version, right? For example, feature would have feature slash whatever. And develop and master are just develop and master without prefixes.
So for us, like we simplified the process. We don't have different branches right now, feature branches. We have work in progress, right?
No, that is actually not correct. We do have feature branches, and we create a feature branch for every feature. What we don't have is a separate environment for testing each of those branches. We have one environment, and then we can switch branches on that environment. We can switch it to point to different branches. So the branch is deployed to the server. So today you have issue 1, 2, 3. Tomorrow on the same URL, you can have issue 1, 2, 4.
But does this environment work in progress should be updated and same as live, or there is no need for it? Not mandatory.
In Git Flow, any updates to master should propagate to develop eventually. So that means that if you created a branch from develop, it would get updates. And as a good practice, we do continuous integration, which means that we get updates from develop to feature branches automatically as well. So that means it's updated during working on the issue.
Oh, okay. So there is no need like staging. We need once in a while we need to update it with the master, right? Release branch.
Yeah. Staging. It's not a good idea to update staging automatically on demand like this, right? Because it can break, and then you just create delays for release. It's a good idea to do this in a controlled way, right? Manually, in other words, doesn't have to be manual in terms of technical work, but it has to be manual in terms of triggering the event, right? So you wanna manually update. You wanna manually say, okay, now I'm gonna update. For other branches, for feature branches, it's actually a good practice to have this on a continuous basis. That's the concept of continuous integration. You get updates from your trunk, in our case, develop, and develop gets updated from upstream branches automatically. So our servers automatically do that, and that means that your code can break in feature branch, right? Because something whatever went wrong, right? And it can break. But that's a good thing. We want the code to break as early as possible, right? Ideally, we want it to break in feature branch, not in release branch. And definitely not on live. So we want to keep the bugs in feature branches as much as possible.
Okay. Also, you mentioned that our release branch, like staging, it's a different environment on different server. What I did not understand, I thought that we have everything on a one server. For example, let's take like pet. So everything is on Hetzner.
Yeah, well, right now we're going into technical details and not really within Git Flow, but let me address that. So this doesn't have to, when I say server, I don't mean physical server. You on a physical server, you can have virtual servers. On those virtual servers, you can have different websites. That's some people also call servers, right? Virtual servers. So you can have like thousands of sites on the same server. You can have thousands of virtual machines on the same server. So that's what I'm referring to. There's absolutely no requirement that this is a separate, physical machine or even a separate virtual machine. This has nothing to do with Git Flow.
So it's somehow it's configured a bit different, right? Staging. So it's not at the same environment.
Yeah. The files are in a separate place, right? And the configuration is separate from the other. Otherwise, when a feature branch breaks something, it would break everything else. So we have to isolate them, right? And we do this using the LXC technology. So we use virtual containers. So things are separated by virtualization, pair of virtualization on the kernel level. So the sites don't see each other and they can't interact and they can't break each other. So for all intents and purposes, it could be different servers, right? It doesn't really matter.
Okay, well, I think you answered my question, but also here is another case right now that I just recently got about. You told me before about one task with a pop-up that you don't see any branches and you don't see any commits, but Chedo told me that Yura, he was working on a VIP branch, on work in progress branch, but right now I don't see this feature on the branch. So something went wrong. Like what could happen?
Okay. Well, when I say I don't see any commits, what I mean is we use Stash or Bitbucket server for managing code. Stash has a really nice feature of finding commits related to Jira issues. So when you commit to Stash with a comment that includes an issue number, so I don't know, test 1, 2, 3, right? Then it will match it to that issue. When you open the issue in Jira, it will find it, right? And it will show the commit to as related to that issue. So it doesn't. It searches through all repositories and all branches. It doesn't have to be even in the branch for that particular issue. Even if it's anywhere, it will find it. In this case, it didn't. So there are two options. Either the commit never got to the code server, or it was never committed. There is no third option.
And developer should commit it, right? So it was not checked.
Sure.
It's developer.
Yeah.
So something that probably Yura did not do, right?
Could be, different things. But what we see is we don't have that. We don't have any commits related to that issue on the server. Everything is committed. Everything is pushed to the server. So there's nothing out of date there, right? It's possible. So it can technically be possible that somebody, revert to that commit or whatever, but we would still see the issue code. So I don't see any way that it could just disappear.
So when developer takes a feature branch from develop, it should has a task number, right? And it should be related or kind of connected to tasks, so it doesn't get lost, right?
Absolutely, yeah. The connection is on the commit comment level. Okay, so branches are useful, and they can also be related to issues, right? And Stash can show you the branches related to the issue because they have the code and so on. But it's actually the commits that are linked. So when you make some changes, let's say you add a file, right? A commit is just a set of changes in Git, right? So you add a file, you change another file, and then you add these two changes as a commit, right? This is like a single bulk change. And when you add that to Git as a change, okay, I made this change, you add a comment. And this is pretty much like editing a page in Confluence, which you do daily, right? It's the same thing. You edited something here, you deleted something here, and then you save the page, and then you can add a comment. In Confluence, you can also add a comment on the bottom, right? This is the same thing. It works absolutely the same way. So Git is just the same thing for code, for files, right? So if I don't enter the issue code in my comment when I save commit, right, then Stash will not be able to understand, what it's related to, and it won't show it. So that's one possibility as well. If I just enter, work on issue, then it can be anything. And of course, systems don't understand what it's related to.
So it can be somewhere, right? So we don't know where it is.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, there's a log in Git, of course, where you can see all commits. So it's possible to look in the past. In this particular case, I didn't see any comment. I didn't see any commits on the branch made by this developer. So.
Okay, good. I see. So I need to talk to the developer.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm kind of clear, I think.
Okay. So how this works with Atlassian tools in Jira and Stash or Bitbucket server, what you would do is for feature branches, you have an issue, right, that describes the feature. And then in Jira, you click create branch right from Jira. And that would create a branch, that would create a feature branch with the right prefix and everything right from Jira, just clicking, right? You don't have to use Git or anything else. And then you have the feature branch. As a developer, you can then get that feature branch, work in it, and submit code to it. And then QA can test it and so on using the feature, right? For develop, you don't need anything in Jira or Stash. You just need develop branch existing. Stash does understand this is a trunk branch. It understands Git Flow a little bit. And then for release branches, you just create an issue for the release. It can be convenient to include deployment tasks in that issue. And you just create a branch from that issue called release / something. If you select the type of branch in Jira, again, just clicking, you will create the right thing. And that creates a new branch from develop, right? You can do this graphically. All of these things you do graphically. You don't have to use or even know Git a lot, right? You just need to understand the concept of branches. And then you're done. Then all you have to do is test that release branch, and then you have a deployment. Stash and GitHub, for people who use GitHub, are useful in a way that you can create pull requests between these merges back to the appropriate branches so that you can do code review. When a feature is complete, you do a pull request to develop, which means I'm creating a merge request to develop. Okay, I want to merge feature branch back to develop because I think it's finished. And then you can have like QA maybe approve that pull request because it can, it's tested and it works fine. You can have a code reviewer review the issue, or reviewers if you're using peer review. And then the same thing for deploying. If you have a pull request to master, then that means, okay, this is a merge request to live, and people just can click approve and can click merge. Again, it's completely graphical. You just click buttons in the browser, and you don't have to do anything else.
All right. So the next step to show me how it works in Stash.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Albina. We'll be finishing today. Again, this is not meant to be a full Git Flow walkthrough or whatever, and there's a lot of proprietary stuff that we use in Mementia, but it's a good illustration of the application of the process. The process is really simple. It's not even the best, probably, I think, out there, but it just happens to be something we use. So, okay, thanks. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you.